Boujmadi, an international expert in renewable energies. He will be the moderator of this afternoon session. The floor is yours, Mr. Riyad.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the Merciful. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll be starting the debate of this afternoon via first and foremost the presentations. So I would like to invite Mr. Jalali Slimani. I would like to invite Madame Rim Lusif. Mr. Rafiq Messiah as well will be joining us via video conference. I would like also to thank and I will give you a summary about this morning session. There was some presentation, a very high-level presentation from a very famous institution, OECD, European Union, as well as our colleague from China. As you know, that China can be the half of the planet. So messages were very strong. We have talked a lot about regulation, what an open market is, which we said that it is the most structured, regulated and most frame market. I think with the COVID-19 we are living so far, it is a situation that is currently shaking the economic world. I have read some articles and reports just by BCG, McKinsey, Goldman Sachs, saying that this pandemic will remain 5 other years, and it will have a strong impact on the world economy. So only the big companies will remain, and so they will be more dominant, and there are some risks to be dominating. This is a bigger picture, but what happening with the famous American companies such as Amazon, Apple, Google, Facebook, and we are following the trial with Facebook about the dominance of the social network. It's about, as you know, money that is behind, not only media, but there is a particularity. There is particular aspect in Algeria. We have already told that we are currently living a recent simulation, which is the increase of some products, especially agri-food. We are living in a series of potatoes, and it becomes a pain in the neck because there is speculation, but it's a parameter that comes in a balance of offer and requires in a regulated, controlled, and framed market. But as soon as we create the rarity, here we are borderlines that we are in the penal side. The rarity is forbidden. There are some situations in Europe, for example, in IT, in the first years of 2000, there are some people who bought some screens and stocked them till Christmas to increase their price to 60%, but they all were jailed. There was another case of European case. There was an agreement with telecommunication operator to invoice the data. They have been all sentenced to at least 200,000 euro. It's just when they started discussing with them. This is very serious. And competition, there is a presenter this morning who had a very interesting first slide. The competition is very important for an economic tissue, for the health economy of country, because it creates the growth, the productivity, the employment. It decreases the gaps, and it's been shown. And we don't have to reshow and or prove approved theory. But in every open economy, we need a regulator, an accurate framework, and people can play inside. But when they go out that framework, it is a penalty. It is. I have the chance to have very interesting personality around me. I give the floor to Mr. Slimani, class member.
Une seconde, Monsieur Slimani. J'ai oublié une personne qui doit nous rejoindre.
I've forgotten to invite Mr. Budisa Nordin. He is the president of the Commission of Competition Regulation and the World Economy at the Knesset. You are welcome, Mr. Budisa.
Bien, je vais suivre sur mes pages puisqu'il y a un problème technique pour le micro.
There is a technical problem, so I can't follow you about the slide. First of all, I wish you a good afternoon. I will give you a summary about perspectives and an overview about competition and monopoly in our country. So it is a presentation about 4 points that will have 4 pillars.
Donc, on va aborder 4 points.
I will give you some points about the concept of monopoly. We have talked enough this morning, and after that, a brief background about competition of our country. I talked about ambiguity and difficulties about laws in force today. And we thank God that there is a new law that will be that is under designing, and we talk about the environment of competition, and we wonder why the competition is not intense in our country as it is the case in other markets. I will also tell you about some perspectives. Everybody knows that so the monopoly, so there is the offer and its structure of the market to pure conquest perfect. So there is a permanent character of monopoly. So the problem is when there is monopoly, it creates a situation that is not justified by the general interest, and that does not maximize the richness, and it also penalizes the country, the economy, the operators, and also the consumers. I have designed this scheme. When you notice, I can add the excess of consumption, and when the price is less, consumer ask for more products, and it is the opposite with the product. So when these two curves cross in E points, we can say that there is a balance, and the prices are determined by the offer and the request. So when the price is higher than the balance price, there is an imbalance, but there is a excess or overflow of monopoly. So we can say that there is one. In Algeria, we have that there is a natural monopoly like Sonatrach, Sonatrach. So as all the countries in the world, they have to exist. It is not easy to another competitors to start. So there is a monopoly that is legal or institutional, like where the state is covering. Algeria, Naftal, Anab, but as you know, Algeria is it will be open to competition, where there are some operators that will be joining the competition. We have an innovation monopolies, especially pharmaceutical laboratories. They would like to have So they would like to have a patent and will take the market for 20 years. And we have other monopolies like GAFAM, as I said, Google, Facebook, Amazon. And so that are the monopolies of platforms. So as we said, the problem is not the monopoly, but it's the abuse of the monopolies, where they are against the general interest. At this level, we should. I don't know if you listen about Joseph Schumpeter. He is famous. He is the father of the temporary monopoly. He said that it should exist, but it should exist in an amount of time, and it should not go to the detriment of other monopoly. So bigger companies are. But the problem with the GAFAM, here the doubt is installed. They have more than 50 years and they made considerable barriers where no other operator could penetrate in their area. And another time, technical problems. What we should learn in this part is the right of concurrence of competition is the right of abuse. When we say a dominant position or an agreement or abusement or of any customer and with a supplier, when we talk about dominant position, we mean it's the abuse. When we talk about agreement, it's non-derivative or illicit agreement. In COVID-19, European Union, they allowed the agreement, so companies could gather together to sell in the surface all the products, and they also shared the markets to just face the prices. So when we have agreement without any abuse, so that does not make any problem. To come back to the background and to Algeria, I will tell you about the legal framework. We have two notes. So the first one, 1955, 1905, and the note of 2003, and complemented by two laws, 2008, 2010, about competition. And so far today we are in living the birth of the new law that is under revision. So the main characteristics, we have to tell the truth. All those laws that have been made to struggle against the dominant position and create a body who watch and to ensure surveillance against dominance, and formed by investigators and instructors and so on. And this law that is that is still in force aim to stimulate the efficiency and serve the consumer. Among the provision of the ordinance, and especially the two laws of 2008 and 2010, and serve and boost the efficiency of the company and to abide by the international standards. And I will tell you later about it. I will tell you about the place of the Competition Council in the institutional. In 1995, it's been installed by the President of the Republic, and then in 2003, it has been installed in head of government, and then in 2008, as I told you, there were two laws, 2008, 2010. It's been installed at the Ministry in charge of Commerce. this decrease then will not enable the body of competition to play its role in appropriate way, horizontal and vertically. And there is similar placement in neighbor countries. They are in a higher place at the government. Just to let you know that we need to have a healthy distance between the authority of competition and the executive power to avoid any interference and any.
So, excuse me, I will skip this slide. The second point, you should know that the Competition Council in our country has experienced 2 interruptions. So the first one, we cannot explain it. The second one, it was in the case of the preparation of the law and the rehabilitation of this council. You know that from 2003 to 2013, they didn't renew the mandate of the members of the council. So 10 years without doing anything within this council. So since January 2021, the council is freezed. So we are waiting for the new law in order to reconstitute the members of the council. Why did they freeze the council? Because the mandates have came to an end. So we need to bear in mind that the first decree 9506 of January 1995, as well as the decree and the amendments of 2008, 2010 have contributed to decrease the development of this council, and the freezing of the activities of this council in 2021 also has contributed to the non-participation of the council in the development of the country. So here we have some ambiguities in the texts governing the market. So, in 1995, we had 5 judges or magistrates in the Council of Competition. We have one from the Court of Accounts. We have one from the Supreme Court. Why I'm talking about magistrates? Because engaging the magistrates is very important. So we need to engage the magistrates, because the decisions of the council can be appealed in front of the or before the courts, the Supreme Court or the Court of State. So if you have a look at the dispositions of the Decree 0303, so you will see and find out that you see that there are many ambiguities, especially when it comes to the dominant possession and to the abuse of the dominant possession, as well as the abuse of enterprises and many other things. So there are many ambiguities in the texts governing this market. So these dispositions, so they are made up of 74 articles, so they are obstacles. So after 2 years of the implementation, so we came up with one observation and remark. So the relevance of the competition council to the executive power and to the executive authorities has hindered the work of the competition council. So the competition council also reacts after the delegation of the state. So we should put this council under the high authorities of the state in order to give him more to give it more power and to enable it to work more efficiently. So there are interference of prerogatives between the competition council and the general directorate for competition relevant to the Ministry of Commerce. So we need to bear all these things in mind. We have conflicts of interest because in the competition council we have 6 permanent members and 6 non-permanent members. We have representatives of the professional associations as well as representatives of the consumers associations, and there is a conflict of interest between both of them. So the representatives of the professional associations said that they are here in order to defend their interests, but it's not the right place in order to defend the professional associations. When we study a folder pertaining to an enterprise, so the risk is very high that there will be interferences. Second, so the law stipulated 2 deputy presidents, but they shouldn't be permanent. They are non-permanent. And that's why in the amendments that we have proposed or we have suggested, we have suggested that the members should be permanent. So what we can wait from or can expect from a member who is non-permanent, who is just on a temporary basis. So the autonomy also of the autonomy of the council is something very important as well. So, but the budget of the competition council is dependent to the Ministry of Commerce. When it comes to consultations as well, so we need to also to empower the council, and the council should be autonomous in order to be able to do its work independently and to provide consultations. When it comes to the public markets, I would like to say that when we we see that there is a commission. There is a commission in commission in order to study the dominant possession and the abuse of the dominant possession. In the public markets, this concept of agreements between the bidding parties is weird. When it comes to the economic concentration, Mr. Losif, who is, or Ms. Losif, who is present with us, is well placed in order to talk about all these things. So she will explain in more details all these things. So we will see how the council gives its points of view and the legal opinion of the council. So we will see all these things. We will see the concentrations that are likely to lead to a dominant possession. So we will see all these things. So Ms. Losif will talk about all these things. She is well placed, as I said, in order to talk about all these things. So we need to measure the concentration position through a threshold of percentage. So we need to bear all these in mind. This is something very important because when it comes to the concentrations, we need to determine the pertinent markets, and we are in the competition authority. We need to make sure before we can say that the concentration can lead to issues or problems, because we always said that above 40% the concentration is risky, but under the threshold of 40% it's okay. So we have to see all these things. Of course, there is a confusion between the laws of the competition. So we have the text 0303 and we have the text 04. So it defines the prerogatives of the council when it comes to investigations and inquiries. So the last point that I'm going to talk about is the perquisitions. So the perquisitions should be done under the control of the magistrate. So excuse me once again, the speaker said. So I have here the notification toll from 2014 to 2020. So you will see here that the notification is, or the rate of notification is very weak and very low, and the texts are not well interpreted. So there is a misinterpretation of the legal texts. So this is a big issue, and that's why the council many times has been notified in issues that are not pertaining to the work of the council. Of course, it's our duty to guide the bodies that notify us into the correct bodies and the appropriate bodies. So the conclusion of this part, so the ambiguities and the gaps that are existing in the texts that are in force right now. So are hindering the work of the council, and we need to bridge all the gaps in order to boost the work of the council. I would finish this fourth part in order to give you my opinion, and I would like to say that the issue of intensification of competition. So here the remark of the observation, we can say that we don't have a real dynamism of market. In fact, the public or the economic sector, namely the industrial one, is characterized by the family enterprises, as well as the absence of the financial markets. Also, the Algerian market is characterized by the presence of public monopoly, namely when we talk about electricity, gas, water, and so posts, all these things. So they are characterized by the monopoly of the state. The same thing for the pharmaceutical industry. We have the monopoly of just 4 operators or 5 operators when we have a look at the economic figures. But although we have many operators, so we have many small enterprises that are working with the 4 or 5 great enterprises. So we need to boost the role of the competition council, and we should accelerate the economic reforms. So from our point of view, we have 2 priorities that should be followed by the public authorities, because when we talk about the competition council, it is very important to boost its role. So the competition council is here in order to improve the climate of business in Algeria. And you know that when we improve the climate of business in Algeria, so we mean by this to lift all barriers before the investors to invest in Algeria, as well as to fight against the informal market. So we need to do all these things in order to boost the economy. So we need to do all these things. So the fight against informal market is or black market, it's very important. According to the estimations, it represents 40% or 50% of the labor market. So the public authorities are thinking about solutions in order to settle all these issues. I would like to finish or to end my presentation by talking about the cooperation, international cooperation. So while the public authorities are interested with the deficit of the balance, commercial balance, we need to strengthen the international cooperation and to lift the barriers for the investors. So there should be cooperation between our country and the other countries. The speaker is going too fast. Maybe you should ask him to slow down. It's impossible to interpret at this rate. So if you have a look at the agreement, as the association agreement between Algeria and Europe, you will find annexes. So just 1 or 2 minutes, Mr. Slimani, then the end of your time. So it's not a big issue. Just to tell you that the competition authority in Algeria has signed the cooperation agreement with French authorities for competition and with the Austrian authorities for competition, but these conventions or these agreements are only limited for training. So we went there for training and for exchanging non-confidential documents. So when we asked to include in this agreements and conventions mutual investigations, so if we are victims of foreign cartel and you need to do an investigation, so you should do it, and same thing for us. So they didn't accept. They said they don't have the budget, and they should ask the European Commission at the European Union their approval before they do so. And third, they said they don't necessarily have the same competition law. But I just briefly said that in this convention it was mentioned that we can do mutual investigations. So we have perspectives. So I'm not going to read all these perspectives. The perspectives are about the lifting of all these barriers in order to enable the council to do its work more effectively. So we should also liberate the economy. So when we do all these things, so the perspectives will be better, and I thank you for your attention. Apologies for talking a lot. Thank you very much, Mr. Slimani. It was very interesting. It was about the text of laws, and we will discuss it more later. Now I will ask Miss Reem Lucif to give her presentation. The floor is yours, Miss Reem.
Donc bonjour à tous.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I opted to talk about the control of concentrations. It is an instrument of prevention. It's an instrument for prevention against the creation of monopoly. So we should intervene beforehand. So it is a preventive tool, and it's not hired for remedy. So the idea is to act beforehand. So we should anticipate the negative effects in the market after the rapprochement between two enterprises. So we should prevent the creation of monopoly. So we should avoid the negative impact of this rapprochement. So because the impact could be negative, in order to do so, we have an existing decree 0303, and then we will talk about the project of reform. So today everything is stipulated in the chapter 3 of the decrees 0303. So in Algeria, and since the reactivation of the Competition Council in 2013, so we have seen that the enterprises don't have this reflex to notify the Competition Council about the economic concentrations. Mr. Slimani, correct me if I'm wrong. So maybe between 2013 and 2020, only 4 times or 5 times the council was notified. That's why in 2016 the council launched a campaign, an awareness campaign, in order to raise the awareness of the enterprises that the competition council is here in order to control the monopoly and to punish this monopoly. So that's what we have done in my practice with my customers. So we advise the foreign investors to have this culture of control of concentration, and they should notify. So because the impact is negative for the Algerian market, I would like to say that since the reactivation of the council in 2013 till now, the council is not really working. So and all the actions of the council in partnership with the European Commission, there are many actions that are implemented, and today the investors are doing an anti-competition analysis, and they know the things that they should notify. So from 2013 to 2021, so the results are very low in Algeria. As Mr. Slimani said, we have only family enterprises, so the margin is low, so maybe the enterprises are not fully aware of this antitrust and the monopoly law. That's why maybe the notification rate is low from 2013 to 2021. So the idea is to explain the criteria for notifying the competition council. So first condition, so the practice should be qualified or described as concentration. So in the decree 0303, so we have the definition of the concentration. We have everything. So all operations are well explained here. So the second condition, and this is the most difficult one to appreciate, is because we have to define the pertinent market. We have to define the market. That's why the Competition Council will work on defining the market accurately and precisely in order to avoid this threshold of 40%. So we will see the definitions today in France and in the European Union. We have threshold of economic figures. It enables us in an objective manner to see if the concentration is taking place or not. So this is the criterion in Europe. So I think that the Competition Council issued an opinion in order to review this law and to replace the threshold by the threshold of the notification, so like they are doing in France or in the European Union. So if we have all these two conditions, we have to notify the council about this operation, but we have exceptions. For instance, there are concentrations allowed by the or permitted by the council for the public interest and the general interest. So sometimes even if we go beyond 40% threshold, so we can not notify because maybe this concentration will contribute to development, the employability, and to the national economy, so we can permit this type of concentration even if they go beyond the threshold of 40%. Here I would like to talk about the calendar of examining the operations. So you have to provide the documents to the Competition Council. So we have a decree in order to define this process. We have a rapporteur in the competition council. He will be in charge of examining the folder. He may ask the companies notifying the council to provide additional documents, and once the documents are completed, so the competition council will consult with the Ministry of Commerce, the Ministry of Industry. Then, after getting the opinion of the pertinent ministry, maybe the Ministry of Commerce, maybe the Ministry of Industry, the competition council delivers its legal opinion. So this is what we do in the competition council. So maybe the council can reject the notification folder, and you can appeal before the Court of State or the Council of State. So we have two remarks, practical remarks, because before notifying the council, we should ask ourselves if this notification will delay my closing. Today we are facing difficulties. Today I'm not aware if I should notify the competition council or not. So we need to check everything. So this is what we should do today. If we notify a concentration operation, we will not get the response immediately, so the colleagues cannot make the decision immediately. So I don't know if I can complete the activities if I notify the council. So these are the two practical aspects that should be taken into account. So today, if I notify the council, the council is freezed. After 3 months, can I get the decision? So the second point, if we notify the council, whether we can continue the activities or we should wait, which will cause a delay for the activities. Also we should be aware that if we don't notify, so there will be fines. So you should pay fines with big amounts. So you should be aware of this. So this is something very important that you should bear in mind. And I think that is everything that I have. I finished my presentation. So if you have any other questions, please do not hesitate to ask them. Thank you, Miss Lucif. It is an interesting presentation. I think I have questions for you and for Mr. Slimani when we open the debates. Now I ask Mr. Rafiq Masai to join me online. Good morning, Mr. The floor is yours. Do you hear me?
Yes. Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Peace be upon you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak at this competition conference or this competition law workshop. Before I begin, I would like to talk about competition in general as competition matters. It is a key catalyst for productivity and economic growth. It is also a key factor for free market and promote innovation and growth also. But my subject today, it will be competition law in the GCC country, the 6 GCC country, the Gulf country, Saudi Arabia and UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain and Oman. So, as everybody knows, that as this country, just a minute, I don't see the. Do you have the presentation in front of you?
No, we haven't any presentation. We tried to launch it.
I don't know because I cannot see it now.
Just 1 second. We try to. It's okay. Hello?
No?
It's working now. You can go ahead, please.
Who can turn the slide from here? Can you go to the next slide?
The first one. Now it's the second, the table of contents.
Yes, I start by why adopt competition law in the first place. Okay, I will look at it from my.
Now you are on introduction.
Yes. I start by the introduction. Why adopt competition law in the first place? Basically, we adopt competition law because for the desire of fairness in the marketplace and to prohibit companies from abusing their power, as well as to protect consumer and start up from the exploitation of unfair and predatory practices of big enterprise. Of course, the last point is to promote economic growth, innovation, and efficient use of resources. So, despite the shortcomings in the GCC country, why they adopt competition law in the first place? Basically, it was under the influence of the World Trade Organization, of the international organization like the International Competition Network, the World Bank, the IMF. All these institutions influenced or imposed in different way to this country to adopt competition laws. So it is against this backdrop that GCC states enacted and implemented regulatory framework and policy to address competition issue and antitrust challenges. So GCC country, namely Saudi, Qatar, Kuwait, and UAE, and Oman have all adopted competition law between the period of 2004 to 2014. Only Bahrain enacted its competition law in 2018. But in general, during all this period, it was like the case in Algeria between 2004 or 2014. So the competition authority was weak and doesn't have the means of enforcement or implementation in reality. So I would like to go to next slide.
It's okay.
Okay. So as I said, for many businesses in GCC, competition law are not on the agenda of important risks that require mitigation. When I look at it from an investor point of view, when somebody wants to come to take over or for M&A or whatever, so nobody really think that there is an enforcement if we abuse market position or if we go for monopoly or whatever. So it's just this competition law remained at before it was like just a decorative kind of cosmetic. because it was not coming from the belief of the system here. It's imposed by overseas or by other forces. And there is no significant history of enforcement. Despite the existence of specific laws, the executive infrastructure to police competition law is in its early stage. But occasionally, like we have heard in Kuwait, there is a case when we have seen the authority imposed fines on an application maybe called Talabat. It's an application for food for restaurant that abused its market dominance, and the authority in 2019 imposed a big fine on that. Another cases are recently in the Kingdom Saudi Arabia, we have seen also with the new law that was amended, let's say, in 2019, where the authority was empowered and imposed until today, I think, 8 cases, imposed fines on 8 cases. So I can go to another one now, adoption condition. We can move. In this one also adoption of competition law. I'm talking here about, in general, globalization, the factor that drives, let's say, the GCC to adopt the competition law. Can we move to the slide, challenges to the effective enforcement of competition law? This is the major points that I want to emphasize today. It is the enforcement of competition law that is really presenting challenges in this region. First of all, this challenge of effective application of competition law, we have lack of competition culture, which is a major obstacle to implementing competition law. We have high market concentration, nascent industry in need of protection, cronyism, nepotism, and corruption, failure to integrate adopted competition law into the broader set of development policies, and the government unwillingness to implement market economy and supportive legal environment also. And we have lack of institutional knowledge and experience, expert resources that will support these authorities. Next slide, advocacy. So as we know that International Competition Network states that competition advocacy is a soft law conducted by competition authority in order to promote a competitive environment. We have 2 types of competition advocacy which are necessary in developing countries. The first is advocating the benefit of competition to government institutions directly, and the second is advocating the importance of competition to the general public. Competition authority has the role of aiding government and ministers to realize and analyze the competitive effects of their decision. During the advocacy process, the competition authority is the one to assess and agree on the most important steps to be taken as necessary for the enhancement of the whole process. Here, in this next slide, the relationship between sectoral bodies and competition authority. I put these slides because if we take a country like the United Arab Emirates, the competition law in UAE existed before the existence of the authority. But it was on a sectoral basis. For example, for the telecom sector, for example, we have an authority. For aviation sector, we have an authority. For oil and gas sector, there is an authority also. So each body or each sector has its own authority. When the competition law came into adoption, so they find like 2 sets of regulation, 2 sets of policies, which create like confusion at the beginning. And that's why when we look at the competition law of UAE, we find so many exceptions. For example, if you go to United Arab Emirates Federal Law number 4 2012 and enacted in 2013, the legislation applied to all economic activity that are carried out in the UAE, but exceptions are granted to government and its entities, as well as enterprise operating in telecommunication, financial services, cultural activity, oil and gas, pharmaceutical product, postal service, electricity and water and transportation. So everything is excluded. So this competition law is for what exactly? For I think for the fish market or for the fruits and vegetables market. So why? Because the regulator doesn't want to see two regulations, one overlap the others. And this is so when we go back to this diagram, competition law mandates the competition authority to deal with all competition matters. For example, if in Model 1, sectoral bodies need to resort to competition authorities for competition within their sector. This is the example of Lebanon. So when there is no conflict between two institutions. In Model 2, we have sectoral bodies have complete authority to deal with competition issues and do not need the competition authority to implement their policies. This is the case of UAE. So, for example, the competition authority here doesn't have any say on the telecom market or on the financial sector or on pharmaceutical sector because each sector has its own authority. Model 3, which is the case of Egypt, is not relevant in our case. Model 4, the relationship between the sectoral bodies and competition authority are left uncharted. There is no, so it means that competition law, it's providing regulation for the whole economy. At the same time, they have other sector body, other authorities that are governing that sector, which create confusion and uncertainty from legal point of view. So, what do competition rules cover? This is in general promote and seek to maintain market competition by regulating anti-competitive conduct by companies, prohibiting agreements or practices that restrict free trading and competition between business. These include, in particular, the repression of free trade caused by cartel, banning abusive behavior by firms dominating the market, prohibiting merger and acquisition transactions that are considered to threaten the competitive process, or approve it subject to remedies such as an obligation to divest part of the merged business or to offer license or access to facilities that enable other business to continue competing. Now we have for each country, like next time when we have Saudi Arabia, for each country, I make like a resume, like a summary about the country, about the law that governs competition law, what is allowed, what is contained in this law. For example, we take the example of the Saudi here. It was passed the royal decree number M25 in June 2004 with amendment made in February 2014. In addition to implementing regulation of the Competition Council number 126 in July 2014. So a new competition law was issued by royal decree in March 2019, but didn't go into effect until 25 September 2019. Company that generate turnover, this law, it applies to company that generate turnover in the kingdom, whether based in the kingdom or not, could now be subject to the provision of this law. It means that this law, it has also extraterritorial impact. It will be applied on companies that have benefit from the kingdom, whether they are based in the Saudi or not. As long as they have some benefit from Saudi, this law will affect them. We have regulated this law, regulated by the Competition Council, which enjoys certain independence, although it operates under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Another characteristic in the GCC, except the Sultanate of Oman, the other five, their competition authority is under the supervision of the Ministry of Commerce or Economy or Industry, so they don't really enjoy full independence or financial autonomy. Its application, it applies to all entities, including electronic platforms operating in Saudi, but also to practices taking place abroad if such practices produce anti-competitive effect locally. In this competition law, the new one, there is a possibility of imprisonment for anyone who has benefited either directly or indirectly from the disclosure of a secret related to the job. The law provides exceptions for public corporation and wholly owned state company. Another feature in the GCC in general, when they issue when they adopt their competition law, they make provision to exclude the public sector, all of them, without exception. Regulation allows of exemption for regulation include procedure for economic concentration application to the council, which may be refused, approved, or approved conditionally. We have, and I'm showing here just cases in Saudi Arabia cases. We have the General Authority for Competition imposed a fine on the 21st of December 2022 of $2.66 million on STC Group because it violated an Article 5 of the competition law, which stipulates that any entity with a dominant position shall be prohibited from any practice that could limit competition. The issue, this telecom operator abused its dominant position, imposing certain conditions on sale and purchase processes when dealing with another entity. Accordingly, STC Group was in a weak position as compared to other competitors. So the General Authority for Competition said that it received the complaint that STC has violated the competition law, adding that the telecom operator rejected to deal with another entity to hinder its entrance to the market. Moreover, the Dispute Settlement Committee issued its resolution noting that STC appealed the decision. However, the Administrative Appeal Court upheld the committee resolution on finding the Saudi list telecom operator. Next slide. We have 4 Saudi Arabia.
Mr. Missai, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's left just 2 minutes. It's okay for you?
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
So I will make a summary in this case. All the GCC countries, they have adopted competition law based on influence by international organization. So in this competition law, it lacks enforcement in general. We have seen recently a lot of countries, they start amending their competition law in Kuwait in particular and Saudi Arabia, and we have seen some cases where the authority take decision and fine some companies of abusing their dominant position. This is mainly, we have another factor. So all government entities within the GCC are not covered by the competition authority or by the competition policy. And we have seen we have seen so many cases like here in UAE telecom sector, for example. We have just duopoly of 2 companies, and they abuse their market position, and the authority cannot do anything. Thank you very much. I will not.
Thank you very much. Shukran.
Thank you, Mr. Missai. I'm sure you speak French. You are a Nigerian citizen. We will switch to the French language.
And for all the person in the room, I invite you to participate with us on the panel. Donc, vous êtes invité.
You are invited to the discussion session, Mr. Missai. And I would like also to invite Mr. Boudissa to join us. It's very interesting. The GCC experience exposed and presented by Mr. Missai is very interesting. And now we will see how can we think and how can we provide our country with some ideas in this regard to work also. We need also to select the market and the sector in order to structure our competition commission. And I will start with a question because I heard you in a disciplined manner, and I would like to talk about the concentration or trust threshold. I was working within the top one, the number one electrical group in the world, and I was managing the risks when a company works with a client or a supplier. The threshold of the 40, I've never seen it in my life. We talk about it within the European Union, but it doesn't exist. It's in reality 27%. When the supplier is more than 25%, it becomes a danger, because if I stop working with him, with this supplier, the supplier will be in a bankruptcy. I worked with the biggest banks. Most of them are located in the US. My question is, how can we calculate this threshold? Is it the turnover divided by the market size? My question is, who has to calculate that? Which institution has to calculate it? Or do we need to include this questionnaire in the workflow for all the companies in a quarterly basis or a yearly basis during the collection of financial data? Mr. Sliman, you have the floor. I would prefer to give the floor to Madam, because she is specialized in this matter regarding the calculation. Who does the calculation? I think that there is a decree. She mentioned it. It's a form that you need to fill. Can you hear me? Which decree? It's the 219. The notifier is in charge to, he has to fill the market share it has in terms of market share, in terms of percentage. When it is notified, then the commission or the committee of competition, then they have to verify the figures, because this file includes financial statements of the notifier during the 3 last years. So we have financial experts who are able to process the information, the available information in the financial statements, including in the account. And on this basis, check if there is no gap between the two figures that we have thanks to the calculation. But in order to avoid any doubt, we have a threshold, which is a turnover, who has to be a kind of marker, definitive marker to solve all the problems. You would ask me, how could we choose and select a threshold of this turnover? I said that we need to recruit a team of Algerian experts who know all the sectors, and they can also propose turnovers to be used as threshold, as it was done throughout the world. Is there any reaction to what was said by Mr. Slimani? What was said by Mr. Slimani is very correct, because the parties have to do the analysis of the situation, and the companies will notify an operation, a transaction, and we need to do the analysis. We need to calculate the market share. We need to define also the relevant market, and in order to submit our file to the Council of Competition. It's a voluntary work from the company, and then there is a downstream control or verification by the Council of Competition.
C'est bon? Okay. Merci, madame.
Thank you, Mrs. Lucif. I practiced this matter during several years, the problem of the turnover. The Competition Council could maybe evaluate and assess the size of the market. They can say that the market is 4 billion in these sectors, in this specific sector. If there is one player in the market that makes 100%, it means that it's 4 billion. So there are two ways of calculation, the absolute one and the relative one, in order to have the big picture. But I am convinced that if you take a private player who works only with Sonalgaz, Naftal or Sonatrach, at some time you're exposed to 80-90%. There is a risk here, in a two-way risk, because I have a monopoly as a private company, because I have 90% of the market, but I can receive and be impacted by the indirect monopoly of the government company, of the public company. I do agree that we need to have experts. The Council of Competition is not here to read just the files. They need to assess the markets. It's easy to be done. All the banks know how to assess the size of the market, but the second point that is really important, the role of the bank has to also be involved. They need to follow up their client if they have a client that is really exposed to if the client of the bank is exposed to its client, more than 25%, the bank has to report it. Whether the bank requests an information to its client all the years, or each year, or we can use an authority within the Ministry of Finance. So, as it is done in the EU, the follow-up of CO2 emissions and everything related to the environment, we need to give a questionnaire to the different companies, and they need to mention the different companies, major companies they work with. And you mentioned also family businesses. I think it's not policing, it's just getting enough information in order to have a fair competition in the country in the different sectors. It's my point of view. I don't know if you have another point of view.
Merci.
Thank you. I'm not specialized of this matter, but I have an idea. When we talk about thresholds, when we talk about these very precise aspects, I think that we can find a solution once we create a national mechanism of competition that has a good structure, that is also approved, and we need an operational mechanism. The presentation of Mr. Slimani reflects an instability of the Algerian legislation. So we are really getting the weaknesses of our legislative framework. We need to review the legislation, the regulations of the National Council of Competition. As chairman of this commission, we will be at the moment required to have this project that we are designing, that will be then submitted, and we need to give our point of view, our report as a national council. And we need also to have a history of what we have lived in the past. Mr. Slimani reflected all the gaps and weaknesses in 1995, though it was under the presidency of Algeria, so it was given a paramount importance, but in 2013 it's under the Prime Ministry, and the last decrease in the importance, it was attached to the Ministry of Trade or Commerce. So we didn't value this issue of competition in our country, so we need to put it in its context and to give it the role that we expect from it. I've heard that there were two proposals by Mr. Slimani. He said that we need to work on the business environment. It's extremely important. And he said also, and I think it's very important, the second point, the parallel market or the black market. So if we can do that in order to prepare to process the file that we will receive. So I think that we need to make proposals that are very practical and which meet the circumstances and the conditions of the current situation. Thank you, Mr. Budisa. It was the second question. The informal market compared to the formal or official market. The informal has a concentration, the informal market or the black market has a concentration that is really important. I do agree that the main basis is the legal framework of the Competition Council and its position also, and the importance given to this council. And I want to talk also about operations, and as the CNAS as a council has to do some lobbying, we are a think box that will propose ideas to the government, but in terms of mechanisms, as commissions, we need to describe the situation, but the practice is something else. It's a challenge. So talking about the black market and the formal market, the first question is the high concentration or the trusts that we have. How could the Competition Council contribute to accompany this fight against the informal market, this black market, because it hinders the Algerian economy, definitely. Madam, you have the floor. In my point of view, fighting the informal or the black market, it's a debate in itself, and we can organize a similar on this topic, but it's a transversal topic. The Competition Council could contribute to this fight, but it's also related to the development of payment means, electronic payment means, and I think that we need to reform the banking and financial systems. We need to mobilize them. The Competition Council will just contribute, but for me it's not the essential part of it, of this fight. Just to comment what you said regarding the two axes of progress indicated by Mr. Sliman in his presentation. It's true that the improvement of business environment is important, and I have participated with the OCDE.
Un atelier en fait pour l'amélioration du climat des affaires.
With the OECDs regarding business environment in a business environment theme, and the delegation was received by the Ministry of Industry and Mines, and the idea was to give to formulate ideas in order to improve the business environment and to attract the direct foreign investment in Algeria. It's a program related. It was a program related to all the countries in the south of the Mediterranean Sea. And it's true that in 2019, having a law about competition and having a competition council that is active was an important positive aspect that was noticed by the OECD in the effort to improve the business environment, in addition to the adoption of the law, the enacting of the law regarding the protection of private data. Having a competition council that is active, it was really noted positively by the OECD. Mr. Sliman, you have the floor. It is an idea that I give, that I want to say that could be implemented. The competition council could participate and contribute to absorb the informal economy. We heard from the lady this morning, the lady of the OECD, that they have worked in Peru. Their objective was to evaluate the impact of the legislation on competition, as said by the president of the CNAS. Don't we have some toxic texts in our legislation that prevent SMEs from getting into the market? Is it useful to activate the role of the competition council? The council would need to have as a mission to assess the impact of the legislation on competition. Even if it's huge work, they need to review and to revise all the legal texts. We have systems to prevent companies from getting into a market and from getting some contracts, but we need to do as the other countries. We need to facilitate competition, and we need to review the legal basis, because the legal framework could generate even informal economy and informal economic activities.
Tout à l'heure,
business environment is important. We need to talk about it. I think that we are really in a bad ranking, really low in the ranking, because the investors are complaining that the business environment in Algeria is not attractive. So how could the competition council, how could it facilitate the improvement of the business environment? I would love to have some answers even from the audience. I would like to invite the audience to take the floor and to provide some answers.
Bonjour. Oui.
Ms. Halal, director at the level of CNASI. So I have a question for Mr. Losif. According to you, the inefficiency of the law is a blocking factor for the investors to come and invest in Algeria. That is what you said. Thank you very much. If yes, in fact, when it comes to the control of concentrations, today we ask the question about the efficiency of the law. The law has come into force, but today, if we follow the law, if we notify our operation of concentration, after 3 months we will get the response. So here we will be wondering if we will implement the activities or not. Maybe one day the competition council will be constituted and it will put into doubt our activities and our operations. So the law on competition should be well explained. So we need study days. And we need media campaigns in order to explain the competition law. So because today we have an issue which is the inefficiency of this law. So since there is the rehabilitation of the council, so I would like to add something to what Ms. Lucif has already said. So I would like to say that I have participated in many many tenders in the field of energy in many countries. So the competition council is very important. It is a body of the state. So the investor is waiting or expecting the benefits behind this project. So the competition council needs more clear texts to give more guarantees and to assure the investors. So without these accurate and clear texts, we can't do anything. So I said this when it comes to the energy field, to the energy sector. So we need clear texts. So because the investors are looking for texts in order to guarantee their money, they want to secure and to protect their money. It's something legitimate. So the investors need all these guarantees. So before they come in Algeria to invest, so the foreign investors or even the national investors, they have a look at the laws governing investment in Algeria. So peace be upon you, Mansouri Ali from the National Administration School. So the speaker is reciting a Quranic verse. So after following the proceedings of this study day, and I wish that the study day will come up with recommendations that will be implemented in the field. So the international experiences show that the antitrust law and the anti-monopoly law focus mainly on protecting the market in order to protect the competition, or they face the they face the monopoly. So, dear Professor, how the Algerian legislator can contribute in order to contribute to protect the competition and to fight the monopoly. So to what extent the Algerian legislator can do so? Thank you very much. So the floor is yours, Mr. Boudissa. So the question is clear. Today we are talking about the experience that we lived in Algeria. So we had the Competition Council since 1995. The aim behind this Competition Council was to fulfill the aim that you are talking about. But after the changes that were introduced in Algeria, the legislative change that we have experienced in each phase, we change the laws, we amend the laws. Today, this council is completely freezed. It's not working today. The question that we can answer is how to develop the work and to boost the work of this competition council, and how can we contribute as Knesset in order to make this body an effective body in order to meet your ambition and your demands. And this is the aim behind this meeting, today's meeting. I was talking with Mr. Slimani. Slimani was member of this competition council. He experienced everything. He experienced the different challenges, the different obstacles. So they faced many challenges. So the Competition Council was under the umbrella of the Presidency of the Republic. Then it was under the authority of the Prime Minister, and now it's under the authority of the Minister of Commerce. So these are all challenges. Mr. Messaid, I think you want to intervene. Sorry, I didn't see because you are behind me in the screen. Thank you. Floor is yours.
Yeah, do you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we hear you. You can speak in French?
With regards to the black market, I think it's not the competition law that will directly solve the issue of the black market, because black market basically it's created when the government, it's a rise when government attempt to control.
Mr. Messai,
Yes.
please, you can switch in French or no?
Yes.
Please, do it. Thank you.
Au sujet du marché parallèle, ce n'est pas la loi de la concurrence qui va
parallel
régler
market or the black market. It's not the competition law that is going to solve the problem of the
parce
black
que le marché parallèle
market, because the black
est
market
créé quand le gouvernement contrôle les prix, administre les prix. C'est la source principale déjà de la création d'un marché parallèle. Donc,
and the government cannot control the prices and the tariffs. So
parce que le marché parallèle, les gens qui sont dans
the parallel market or the black market,
parce qu'il y a un arbitrage à faire entre les prix que l'État crée artificiellement, l'État entier.
Black market, so the state that doesn't have any control.
Ça donne un incendie, une motivation pour que les gens achètent au prix de l'État et revendent au marché parallèle. Deuxième point, bien sûr, des fois, c'est les taxes.
The state should give incentives in order to prevent people from going to the black market. The second point,
au sujet de l'investissement étranger,
as to the foreign investment,
il y a des contradictions dans le
We
climat,
have
dans le climat
contradictions
d'affaires en
in
Algérie.
the business climate in
L'investisseur étranger,
Algeria. So the foreign
quand il
investor,
vient en Algérie, il
when
vient pour faire des profits,
he
il va pas faire
comes
des
to
pertes.
Algeria, he comes in order to make benefits,
C'est
to
intéressant pour
make
l'étranger, c'est beaucoup plus le
money.
secteur des hydrocarbures parce qu'ils
And
vendent au
the
dollar,
foreigner
exportent au
investors are
dollar,
interested
et il a
with
des coûts
the
en diamant. Donc,
energy
il nécessite
sector,
et de
so
côté.
they are
Par contre, dans le
interested
secteur
in this
où
sector, but when it comes to
le chiffre
other
d'affaires de l'investisseur
sectors,
étranger est en
so
dollars, la
where
politique d'ajustement ou de dévaluation
the
du
economic
dollar
figures of the
n'est
investor are
pas assez
in
attractive
dinner,
pour un
so they
investisseur
are not
parce que l'Algérie a
interested. They are
la
not
politique
easy to
d'ajustement,
attract,
de dévaluation comme une
contrary to
politique
the energy
monétaire
sector, because they
conjoncturelle.
make
Alors que
profits in
la
USD.
dévaluation, c'est pour régler un
So
problème conjoncturel et non structurel.
this is what I wanted to say.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Messai. We are all in the same wavelength. So I have another question, or sorry, we have a question from the audience. In the name of Allah, most compassionate, most merciful, peace be upon you. I would like to participate with you. I'm Mr. Riyad from the National School of Administration. From my humble point of view, we need to appraise this work, and we appraise also we praise the contribution of the Knesset in order to ensure a transparent competition. So we should fight against the monopoly and antitrust. We would like also to pay your attention that we need to find mechanisms in order to fight monopoly and antitrust. It is illogical to implement the legislations without knowing the people behind the monopoly. So my question is as follow: can we find all these mechanisms in order to find who are the people and behind monopoly, and can we engage imams in this work to raise the awareness about monopoly and antitrust? So Mr. Budisa will answer all questions at once. So do you have other questions? Microphone, please. Good. I would like to come back to the point of the black market we tend to forget. Mr. Ismail Sheikhoun, President of US Algeria Business Council. So my question is simple when it comes to the black market. So maybe we should eradicate. Why we should not eradicate the incentives to this black market, which are the cash? So in the United States of America, so they have measures to eradicate the use of cash, and this is likely to put an end to the black market. So here in Algeria, so it's not very difficult to solve this problem. So why we are using cash till now? So we can use the banks, we can use the credit cards in order to track to the money. So maybe the first action in order to put an end to the parallel market is to use less the cash. So when it comes to doing business, so when we change the legislation frequently, so it's not very interesting, it's not good. So I will give you two examples. So for instance, when it comes to the renewable energy, so we were waiting for the project law in order to govern this renewable energy. So India, in 9 months, they did 9 gigawatt in 9 months. But in Algeria, 5 years waiting for 1 gigawatt. So same thing for the law of oil sector. It's not clear. So these parameters make it very difficult to attract foreign investors, knowing that we have a fierce competition around the world. So maybe the investors will go in other places where they can make benefits, where they can have clear vision. Another point, which is how to get the money back to their country. This is an important point also that should be taken into account. Any other questions?
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you very much, President, Mr. Moderator. First of all, I would like to thank the Knesset for organizing this meeting. It's a timely meeting. Second, I would like to thank them for inviting the customs sector to participate with you. We are here in order to enrich the discussions and to enrich the debate. I have practical questions to ask about the dispositions for the regulation of competition and antitrust. The morning session expert, the Chinese one, she presented the experience of China. So she presented an article and she said that in China, so China, so the competition council can even promulgate laws they see that are pertinent. So, Mr. Slimani, can we do the same thing here in Algeria? Can we give the prerogatives to the competition council in order to promulgate the laws that are or the legislations that are pertinent? The second point, the decree 95 2019. So I would like to ask a question about this decree. It's relative to an ordinance that is not existing now. So what is the role of this decree now? So we need an ecosystem. So and each body should complement the other body. So we need to do all this work in order to boost the competition council work here in Algeria. So we need all these things. So we should harmonize the texts, the legal texts, and the laws for more effective work and more efficiency in work here. So this is what we should do in Algeria. So Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you. Thank you. And last question there, because later we should answer all questions. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm a member of Knesset. I would like to intervene in order to thank Knesset for organizing this day about an important topic. It's an increasingly important topic, so because we should know that we will not have a diversified economy and a competitive economic market without a clear framework, practical one and operational one. So the text shouldn't be just an ink on a paper. So in order to do so, Mr. Slimani has evoked many perspectives. It was clear the things that he has said, but I think we should go further. We should talk about issues that make us upset, because here in Algeria we avoid to talk about these issues that may make us upset. The first issue is the authority of competition that should be impartial, it should be autonomous. So it should be autonomous vis-a-vis the executive power and the economic operators, because this competition authority or the competition council will make decisions, and the decisions should be impartial. So this is the first remark or observation. The second one, which is very important, we need to know that here we have a law on competition, we have a constitution that promotes the competition, but we have, when it comes to the practice and to the implementation, we have the discrimination, clear discrimination. So as I said, we have the clear discrimination towards the private sectors. So we have sectors that the private sector cannot invest in. Maybe the foreign investors can invest in them, but not the private sector. So these are discriminatory measures and the procedures. So these are essential issues of competition. So we need clear procedures about these things. The third element and the third point is the economy. So we need to clarify all these things. So the national industry. So we need to know the shares of each we need to know the statistics. So we don't have the statistics so about the production of the public sector. So we need to do all these things. So I participated in 1990 in the preparation of this text because the public sector was dominant, but today the private sector is dominating in Algeria, so we should have an index about the production of the private sector and also the production of the public sector. So we need to have all these statistics, and so this is very important. This is a basic tool. These are evident and clear things in the world, and today, thanks to the internet, you can communicate and get the information. We have the fourth issue. It is a big issue since we are talking about competition within the internal market. Here in Algeria, we have a big problem, which is the competition in the internal market. So the competition between local entrepreneurs and the foreign entrepreneurs, or operators. So here our system privileges the imports. So we need to talk about this clearly. So even the change rate for the currency, this is a big issue as well. So in 2017, so more than 7,000 billion dinar was paper money. So this has created an imbalance with the rate of exchange rate. So we need to take all of these things into account.
In terms of the production of some essential products like milk, oil products, they are subsidized in Algeria, but in Algeria we subsidize the consumption, and in the rest of the world, milk, cereals, and they are subsidized at the production stage. But we subsidize the consumption of the imported productions. It's not possible to have auto-sufficiency in terms of food, and not to mention the trade agreements that we have without analyzing the impact. We have a free trade area with the European Union. The European Union is the first economic power in the world, and we have a free trade agreement with them. The producers in Algeria, their problems is not competition with the Algerian producers. Their problem are with the imports, and these problems are really deep and huge, and we need to work on them. Regarding the issue of trusts and antitrust, I heard the presentation of Mrs. Lucy. It was very interesting, but we need to say that the business owners in Algeria, if you want to solve this issue, if we want to inform the companies they use a legal tool, which is the code of trade. It regulates the field of trade and concentrations. It's the commerce code or law. We need to harmonize our legal system with its arrangements. We need to adapt them to the regulations of competition in order to have a fair competition, and in order to allow the competitors and the players to use the tools that are available throughout the world. We didn't invent them, they already exist. I just want to say that this issue of competition will create resistance. We need a political will, and efforts to tackle these problems because that are related to the structural organization of our economy. They are not just marginal and marginal problems. I do agree with you, the president of the CNAS, Mr. Ridatir, Professor Ridatir, talks always about these issues. We need to work on all these issues in order to structure and to frame the competition in the Algerian market. I do agree.
S'il vous plaît, monsieur. Question brève.
Please, a direct and brief question. My name is Mr. Serdoul, Directorate of Competition within the Ministry of Trade. I'm a representative of the Minister at the Competition Council since 2015. I would like to also clarify some points, if you agree. The first thing, I would like to thank, first of all, our colleagues within the CNASI for giving us this opportunity. I would love the presentations were related all to the law of competition. If we want to talk about the policy of competition, it includes many laws, because the competition law is for a fair competition, but regarding the policies, we need to include investment, the exchanges, the trade, etc. We all blamed the law of competition, but we need to think about the competition policy, because it has many components. And I really thank Mr. Slimani for his presentation, and I think that for informal economy has an impact on competition, and we need to work on the business environment with all the policies, the legislation, including the legislation. Second, we focused on the importance of the Competition Council with the law 9506 or the law 0303 modified in 2010. The most important is in the missions of the body, because if you read the missions, we have many missions that are listed in the law 0303, and we need all the countries in the world amended their law except France. They did it in 2016. We had amendments in Algeria in 2008, 2010. It solved problems like the problems that we are facing now. The Algerian competition law was presented 2 times to experts. First, it was in 2012. Experts from the European Union in competition. They were experts in competition in 2018 before the United Nations Reset Organization, and we have an amendment draft based on the recommendations of the President of the Republic, and I think that the expert, she mentioned that there was a gap, and I think this gap was addressed by the amendment draft. If we compare the Competition Council from 1995 to 2003, 8 years, and then it stopped, it resumed, then after at 2012, so 8 years of work up to date. The number of cases solved in the second period was more important than the number of cases solved by the Competition Council in the first period. most of the fines that were implemented, the fines were requested from government companies. And like what was said during the presentations, even Sonatrach, the Algerian oil company, they had a sanction and they had to respect and to implement the law of competition. So the Algerian law is implemented whether on private or government companies, and there is a law project and draft that will be discussed. We want a law that will be at the service of the national economy and that would contribute also to attract the investors, because to be frank, when there are many amendments of the law, the investors are not really attracted to invest in a country. So we want a very good amendment. The rules of the competition. You need to do an upstream verification or a downstream verification with the verification of the practices. And I think it's time to stop the interventions. We had many remarks and we had many questions, and I would like to thank you for your efforts, for your participation and your presence in this seminar. Mr. Masai, do you want to comment what was said?
Yes. J'ai quelques points juste à mentionner.
I want to add some points and some ideas to what was said by the audience.
À mon avis, le problème en Algérie, ce n'est pas un
I
problème
think
vraiment de
that
loi.
the problem in Algeria is not a problem related to the law, to the legal framework. It's more a problem of the implementation of this law that is available.
Au sujet du marché, par exemple, du marché parallèle,
regarding the market, for example, the informal market, you have mentioned before, how could we recover the money of the informal market? I can give you a concrete and important and clear example.
Elle fait des transferts d'argent chaque année.
There are transfers of money each year from Algeria to outside without passing. For example, there is money that is transferred to Algeria each year without passing through the banking network, because there are 30% in the exchange rate, 40% more in the exchange rate in the black market. This is why people they don't use the banking network. And we subsidize an importer with an official rate. They can make money through the exchange rate without the cost of the transport, etc. Because they sell their product and they make revenues that are huge thanks to the exchange rate that is subsidized. Let's imagine, for example, when we sell to the importer the foreign currency with the black market rate, they will make profit on the product itself and not on the exchange rate, because the exchange rate would not be subsidized. This is why the government subsidized the import. This is why the domestic investment is very low, because importers are subsidized 40% at 40% thanks to the exchange rate. And I think that we thank you so much, because we talked about the exchange rate with financial products and
Je pense que normalement, pour encourager l'exportateur
exchange covers, and I think also in order to encourage importers not to over invoice, and I think that we need to legalize the exchange rate. And the second point that I wanted to mention is that we need to elevate and to suppress the barriers, because the barriers, they protect the competitors within a market, but the law has to protect the competition and not the competitor within the market. We need to lift the obstacles and the barriers that prevent other competitors to join the markets. I would like to thank everyone for their presence. Thank you for your presence. I really appreciated the contribution of the audience. I would like to thank also the participants of the debate, Mrs. Luciv, Mr. Budisa, and Mr. Slimani, and Mr. Misai. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And I would like to ask Madame Hasna Misai, Vice President, Vice Chairman of the Knesset, for the to close this seminar. Bonjour à tous. Mesdames et messieurs, pour clôture, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude this training, this seminar, I would like to thank everyone. Thank you for your participation. I would like to thank the experts from different countries, and we learned about many experiences in this field of antitrust and competition of legal frameworks, and I think it's important to work on this topic because it will give the same chances for all the businesses. And would like also to thank the participants. Thank you for your patience today, and this reflects that you are giving giving importance to this topic and theme. And it reflects also your interest, as it was said by the chairman of the Knesset this morning. All your proposals and all your recommendations will be transmitted to the authorities in order to enrich the law drafts that will frame the economy that the government and the state is aiming to achieve. So thanks everyone in my name and on behalf of the chairman. I would like to thank you warmly, and I hope that we will meet very soon to discuss very important topics and issues related to the social, economical and environmental aspects of our country. And I announce the closing of the works of this seminar. Thank you again, and assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.